Good evening, everybody. I'm Pam Thomas, the coordinator for the Northern Virginia and DC chapter of CHAD, and I want to welcome you to our October lecture, Signal Regulation and Thriving in a World of Overload, presented by Dr. Jon Thomas. We had a great turnout this afternoon, and we hope you all will enjoy this repeat presentation, which was supposed to be recorded, but now it's live and alive. So our chapter is a volunteer chapter, our organization of trained professionals who offer support to our ADHD community by providing free monthly lectures, offer support groups for parents and adults, and we will be hosting a 2-paneled lecture series in January in lieu of our annual ADHD resource fair that usually happens this month to highlight ADHD Awareness Month. Now to introduce our speaker. Dr. Jon Thomas has been called a counselor, educator, ADHD coach, writer, woodworker, and beekeeper. He prefers fellow traveler at the edge of chaos. For more than 30 years, Dr. Thomas has worked with students, adults, and families to reimagine ADHD, not as a flaw, but as a different way of paying attention with its own kind of brilliance. His first book, Thriving at the Edge of Chaos, Making ADHD a Superpower in College and Career, gave students and educators practical tools for harnessing strengths. In his second book, Beyond the Edge of Chaos, ADHD, Identity, and the New Art of Thriving, that expands that vision into a deeper guide for meaning, identity, and resilience. Dr. Thomas also trains educators, clinicians, and coaches in applying these models and devotes time to men's work, supporting programs that help men grow into purpose and accountability beyond early challenges and trauma.
I don't have the Zoom up. Okay.
And now let me help Dr. Thomas with his technical situation. I'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl Gedzelman. I'm on the board of CHAD of Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. I just wanted to let you know that we will be having lectures all year, and in addition to the panels that will be in January, and it looks like they may have gotten their situation ready to go. So enjoy the lecture.
Sorry about that, everybody. Enjoy the lecture. And we will be providing a recording of the lecture and the handouts following. You'll get it in the email.
Oh, the world of technology. It can be frustrating, but especially for someone with ADHD. I'm going to talk to you tonight about what I call signal regulation. And what I want to get across tonight, and hopefully I can convince you, is that ADHD is not a disorder of attention so much as it is signaling. It's a disorder of signal regulation, and we're going to talk a bit about what that means. I'm going to give you some examples of signaling, and some aspects of ADHD that make signaling uniquely difficult for people with ADHD, and then finish up with some tools for what we can do to make it better. So let's begin. I'm going to start with the idea of the unique aspects of ADHD. But before that, I'm going to go back in time just a bit. Signals were something that kept us alive, being able to tune into signals and understand them. People with ADHD, interestingly enough, are more alert to signals. We pick them up more easily. We're attuned to the kind of stimuli in our environment that produce signals. And what we're going to talk about later is how cues, which is what we get from the environment, trigger or activate signals within us that let us know something meaningful is happening. In early times, the ADHD hunter was more attuned to maybe the signals that let them know game was available, and maybe danger signals were more quickly picked up on by people with ADHD. We're highly sensitized to that. Our psyches, our minds, our our very intelligence is organized around the stimulation that we get from outside of ourselves. So something happened about 20, they say between 20 and 70,000 years ago. Scientists speak of an era called the cognitive revolution, which is when humans developed the capacity for uh, abstract thinking, the ability to conceive of time in a linear fashion. We could think back and remember things that had happened and take meaning from them, and move into the future, extrapolate a future possibilities, and then sequence steps to get there. And things went pretty well for people with ADHD, because we were good enough at that, because the signals in the world were all pretty they're pretty much attuned to the level of development that our brain had. So our brains have, they've gone very slowly at just the right speed through time and their in growth and evolution. But paradoxically, these same creative brains able to conceive of possibilities and utilize abstract thinking developed some new technologies, and they really came to a point of greater focus and acceleration around the Industrial Revolution. I'm going to guess back then that's when things kind of got hard for people with ADHD. The idea of working in a factory doing the same thing over and over again, that was my own personal hell when I was younger. And then we had the IT revolution, and information capacity to process and access information flourished to the point that we now have AI. And with this flourishing has come some difficulties for people with ADHD, but I believe people at large as well, neurotypical people as well. So what we did is that we created technology that our brain was not yet equipped to process in a good way. The result has been addiction, overload, stress, depression, chronic unhappiness. What's happening is the signals that once guided us now have expanded to fill and overfill and clog the airways of our perceptions. We are in signal overload, and the signals that get through all that noise are the ones that are loudest and repeated the most often. And so we're more easily manipulated. People with ADHD, because we're sensitized to signals, are more likely to be screen addicted, their porn addiction, gambling addiction, all the various addictions that have happened as a result of the technology that we've created are now our nemesis. So what do we do with that? I like to think about people with ADHD as the canaries in the mine. One of the things we could do with this is think of people with ADHD, our symptomology, our struggles, as a early warning system for the rest of the culture. I was reading a couple of different articles recently about how people do testing, neurological psych ed testing and neuropsych testing, or coming up with they're diagnosing kids with problems that look like ADHD, sustained attention issues, distractibility, impulsivity, emotional dysregulation, a lot of symptoms of ADHD, but these are neurotypical kids. They don't have ADHD. So what we're seeing is more of a neural adaptive response to signal overload. They're dealing with the TikTok signals, the endless reels on social media, the bombardment of data coming at full blast. Just as people with ADHD are, we're people with ADHD, though, are sort of succumbing to that and getting symptomatic earlier. So I've got a lot of ideas about what to do with this, um, and some of the tools that will help us. We need to learn how to sort this information. We need to tune into what signals are telling us internally. We need to be able to parse through what cues we want to take in from the environment. So let me move on now. there's I've just gotten maybe three of them here, but there's a handful of aspects of ADHD that I've noted through the years that there's not a lot of focus on yet in the literature. One of them is, oh, let's see, we don't have it here, but span of apprehension. Um, I first heard this from Russell Barkley 30 years ago. He talked about one of the 7 ways that we pay attention that we hear about in ADHD a lot is sustained attention, difficulty with paying attention over long periods of time, or especially when it's not stimulating enough. But one of them I remember him talking about was to how much we can pay attention. Our span of apprehension is the term he used. And since that time I first learned of it, I noticed something very interesting in the people I worked with, young people with ADHD, neurodiverse people. When I was speaking to a person, a neurotypical person, I'd say, okay, here's a metaphor I want to give you for span of apprehension. We can only juggle so many objects. And let's say you can juggle 3, and I throw you a 4th, and you say, oh, I can't juggle 4th. What do? I say, well, I'll throw the 4th one out and I just keep juggling. Now, I ask the same question of a person with ADHD. Okay, you're juggling 3 objects. You can only juggle 3 objects. I'll throw you a 4th one. What happens? They all fall. And that's the unique aspect of ADHD that makes it especially difficult for us when we hit signal overload. Juggling too many signals causes us to sort of drop all the balls, and that may look like different in different circumstances. If the signals we get are evoking, or the cues we get are evoking emotional signals, that may look like a panic attack. If they're cognitive, we're in cognitive overload, we may just stop and just, our brain go into lock. Physically, if we're overloaded physically, that will show up maybe as a type of shutdown where we just can't bring ourselves to move ahead. So how we respond when our span of apprehension is exceeded is really, it's a very important signal set to tune into so that we can learn how to monitor what we're paying attention to. And that may mean what we're thinking about, what we're planning, what we're seeing, what we're listening to, the interaction of all of these. We need to learn how to tune into the signals within us that say, I'm approaching overload, so we don't drop all the balls. Here's another one. There's some years back in the early 2000s, doctors discovered a part of a region of our brain we call the default mode network. And here's how they found it. Um, the brain on the right is DMN, that's default mode network. The one on the left is task positive network. So
I'm sorry, excuse me. You're not sharing your screen. Nobody can see any of these images that you're describing. I'm so sorry, but you haven't turned on and shared your screen.
I am so sorry, I didn't know that. Well, let me
So
see.
can you just show the juggling piece and then move forward real quick?
Yeah, how do I do this? Technology. I don't know. No, you'll have to come do it for me. I'm sorry. I can't find wait, here's the Zoom. I got the Zoom. Okay. Chat, share, got it. Okay. Okay, got it.
There. You might want to just do slideshow because you've got two images up.
All right, let me back up. Okay, this is a picture that went with span of apprehension, people juggling, and this is the neurotypical person. You throw them the fourth and they toss it out. The neurodiverse person, ADHD, you throw them an extra ball, they all fall. Okay, so back, so the default mode network right here. The task positive network is that part of the region of our brain that's about focus. So when we're paying attention, like a student sitting in class, they're trying to focus on what's being said. The task positive network is activated in the brain. And what they found is that when that part of the brain is active, the default mode network, that's the part that's about rumination, about thinking of the past, future, um, about emotion, daydreaming, that sort of thing. The creative part of us, the parts of us that bring a lot of the color to our life, that's the default mode network. That part goes dim. It's not activated when the task positive network is on for neurotypical people. But for people with ADHD, neurodiverse people, it's we start paying attention, the task positive network comes on, and then the default mode network is jumping around trying to find a place in there. And so we slip in and out of the task positive network and into the default mode network at times. This is part of the signaling, internal signaling that goes on with the default mode network. The neat thing about certain meds is that they empower the task positive network and they diminish the default mode network. That's things like Ritalin, Adderall. That's the mechanism of action of them. I remember speaking to a professor in Washington U that they were doing research completely unrelated to ADHD, but they're using methylphenidate as the control, and got in a conversation about, I said, God, wouldn't it be neat if there were other easier meds that would potentiate, would empower the task positive network, but diminish the default mode network. And he said, oh, there's a really common one. It's called nicotine. And that's exactly what nicotine does. So no surprise that addictive nicotine use is overrepresented by people with ADHD. Maybe unconsciously, it's a solution that they've come upon that works pretty well, but of course it has all these horrendous health side effects. Finding other ways and just kind of understanding this sometimes when I present this to people with ADHD, this in of itself gives a sense of what they begin to develop accommodations for this. They find ways and means of saying, oh yeah, well that's this default mode network brain trying to jump in here, and sometimes consciously just set it aside or negotiate with it. But here, this is again, this causes a confusion in signaling. Another difference that I haven't read about this anywhere in research, but it's something I noticed in 30 years of working with people. Um, again, harkening back to when in the cognitive revolution, when we developed the capacity for understanding time, we begin to have language for past, present, future, and symbols for it. So in order to conceptualize the past, the present, the future, we have to visualize somehow in our mind's eye a location for the past and the future, and then we project that onto a field of a visual field in our mind's eye. So typically, and there's a category of psychology they call timeline therapy, that it talks a bit about how to use this concept therapeutically. But one of the findings of that is that neurotypical will let people, let's say 80% of people, when asked to point to their future, will or their past, will point to their left. And then when asked to point to the future, they point to the right. So future is like a number line or left to right. It's like we read. And in our culture, a majority of people will see the future to their right and the past to their left. In cultures where people read right to left, it is less frequent. Now, this was just a little experiment of sorts of sort of informal research I've done over the past several decades, but I'll explain this concept of time to people with ADHD. And I'll say, so where's your past located? And they'll say, oh, it's behind me. And the future, oh, it's right up here in front of me. So we think about it, to learn from the past. If I'm neurotypical, I just look over here and metaphorically speaking, it's right over here. I just glance over here and that's my past. But if I'm neurodiverse, I have to turn around and look behind me. And so I may be less inclined to learn from my past, for example, or look at how I did things, and more likely to repeat the same mistake again and again. The future, then, if it's right in front of me, it it's different than a neurotypical person. They look over here and here's all these events and steps leading up to them. For me, as a man with ADHD, my future being right here would mean, okay, here's something going on tomorrow. Here's the next day, and here's something. Oh yeah, that's gonna happen today, and then here, and here. Before long, all these events are eclipsed and superimposed, and they become a huge blob. And it's hard to know. It's hard to plan. It's hard to sequence things. It's hard to pick out what's most important and know where to begin. So that's part of the struggle of ADHD that makes us susceptible to some of the signal overload. These images of the future and the signals that go with that they evoke overwhelm us. So let me go on to what are these signals that I'm talking about? Now, we think cues, signals, and symptoms. Cues are those external triggers, the alarms, the calendar that says, hey, this is due on such and such a date. Or in early times, it was rustling in the grass. And the signal is the internal response. That rustling in the grass could be the next meal, or it could be a predator. I could be in danger. It evoked some sort of an internal response, an emotion, a curiosity. It could be a visual, an auditory, or a kinesthetic response. This is what is the essence of what moves us in life, are the signals. So when I say signal overload, it's a combination of the external cues, all of the noise outside us, and the internal signals that are evoked that are overwhelming. Now, signals are meant to tell us something. If let's say if I have a cue that it's a calendar pops up and alarm that says, hey, this paper's due tomorrow, and this is the third time that alarm's come up. The first time it would have evoked a signal that I would have maybe ignored or diminished. About the third time, the day before, that signal is real loud and it's going to get my attention. If I ignore it again, I'm going to start feeling anxiety, worry, fear, because I haven't acted on I haven't acted on this signal, and it signals what let us know what's important. And if I have emotion around something, that means it's important. I may have a tendency for many reasons to want to there's a thousand reasons why I might want to ignore a signal that says this is due tomorrow. So symptoms, again, are what happens when we ignore signals. We tend to want to respond to the symptoms. A symptom might be, a signal might be, I feel a sort of an unease, or maybe a little hyper aroused or hyperactive. That may be as I dip into it, it might be telling me about a need I have to get up and move around, get outside. And if I don't heed that, it becomes a symptom of maybe I get aggravated real easily. So so I had a client that would say, yeah, I get mad, and first thing my mom will say is, have you taken your meds today? And that emotion is telling him something that about what's going on in his external and internal world. And if we think of them as symptoms that need to be medicated, that we can often go awry with that. So let me talk about the kinds of signals that we have. The cognitive signals are as you would imagine, it's what the mind is doing. They're the thought-based patterns that indicate our brain state and our shifts. Here's an example. I got a few examples here: racing thoughts, brain fog, hyperfocus, decision paralysis. These are examples of cognitive signals. We have those to reveal how our executive functions are managing load. If we can misinterpret them by labeling ourselves as lazy or scattered rather than seeing a signal of fatigue or overload or curiosity as something that needs channeling. Emotions are our strongest signals. They're the felt messages that our bodies use to indicate flagging of meaning or misalignment. Examples are glad, sad, mad, afraid, ashamed, the 5 basic feelings. They tell us what matters and what needs attention. These are the purpose of those signals. They become symptoms when we don't listen to them. So we think about them as symptoms. They're problems that need to be fixed. We think of them as signals. They're information that needs to be interpreted. Energetic or kinesthetic signals are physical signals. It's what our body is telling us. Tension, fatigue, insomnia, restlessness, digestive shifts. This is our body's early warning system for whether we're moving toward depletion or overdrive, or maybe even underutilization. So when we talk about shutdown, that's signal overload is what happens when we shut down, as I mentioned in the span of apprehension slide earlier. there's other types of signals, but I want to just keep it to these three for the purpose of making this understandable. I want to say this about the signaling, and the whole concept of that is I thought of in the first book I wrote, it was about a set of very limited set of signals, like and differences of people with ADHD. And signaling allowed a possibility to get a larger view of what we do and what we're challenged by in the world. And it gives access to additional tools that we can use to manage the signal overload that we face. Again, I'm saying this is someone asked me once, is this a problem? According to your signal concept, is ADHD a problem of the individual or of the environment? And I said, well, it's both. We have noise. We have way too much cues, stimulation in the environment, and people have early and ready access to it. That's a problem with the world. The fact that we are not yet capable of handling that much signal and cue process is a problem of our just the level of development of our brains. So it's both. So what do we do about it? An ideal is to start understanding and learning how to tune into that signaling process and listen to the meaning that we're making of it. And when we do that, it becomes a useful tool for things like motivation, for example. Someone asked me earlier about today on the earlier session for example. I pulled up a case study that will bring all of this together at the end. But another way of looking at this, cues or external cues or stimuli, could be a notice, it could be a calendar entry, activates a signal. When we tune into the signal then converts to motivation, which then propels us to action. That's the clean process that we can use. What happens when it doesn't work that way is that we may get a cue, we'll diminish the signal, or try to hide it directly. Motivation disappears and there's no action. And then we have a sort of a recursive process of a negative shame loop. Another way of thinking is we have an external cue, we touch the signal within, we then reinforce that signal, we focus on it and say, yeah, this means something. It's time to act. We touch in on the meaning and reinforce that signal by understanding some things about ourselves, like what are our values? What's important to us? One of the things we do in our workshops is early on, we'll do a value sort process where people discover, I say discover, what their values are. You think, I think with that I would know that automatically, but a lot of our values, what's important to us, are just beneath the surface, not deep in our unconscious, but beneath the surface. We don't think about it every day. It's sort of a macro of or a belief set that we respond from, not with. And so doing this value sort causes people to be able to understand what is most important to them. And that empowers us to reinforce signals. Understanding our motivation style, or how we are motivated, whether that's desire motivation, we move towards something and take action because we want the outcome, or fear motivation, we are motivated by what we would rather avoid or we fear happening through action or inaction. That's basically the two forms of motivation. And we learn to activate those by um, an internal signaling process that, like desire motivation is, we say, what's in it for me to do this? That creates a picture, an auditory response, and an emotion that is compelling, and we're drawn into this compelling future. Fear motivation is activated by an internal signal loop that's something like, what's the worst that would happen? What would that be like? And we create pictures and answers, and a terrifying scenario emerges, and it motivates us to take action. And beneath all of that, there's unique aspects that, in what I get more into this in the book, and um, also, and I have a Substack account I'll mention at the end, where I want to invite you all to subscribe, because in that I talk about some of these concepts from the second book in greater detail, and there's an opportunity for dialogue and Q&A that's ongoing. But one of the posts I'm going to have in the near future is about the nuanced types of unique aspects of motivation, nuanced to people with ADHD. And so when we put all that together, it enables that combination of values and motivational style. It enables a possibility to reinforce a signal that then motivates us to action. Okay, so tools that help. We have these sort of models, metaphors, handles, if you will, that we use to, we teach folks we work with in our workshops and in our practice. It allows them sort of a vessel to gather this signal type information and use it in ways that help them to monitor and manage our finite resources. One of the I didn't get into this. This is a lot of the first book I did, but there's a way of thinking about people with ADHD is that we thrive at the edge of chaos, that place between order and chaos. It's the edge of criticality. It's a place where we find ourselves moving consciously and unconsciously, because we're at our best there. Everyone's at their best at the edge of criticality, but people with ADHD thrive there. And I believe we unconsciously try to get there by procrastinating, by overloading schedules, by chronic lateness, things that put us right there at the edge. And what we understand is that when we're at the edge of chaos, we're in high productive states, and we're burning a lot of our personal resources. So it's vital that when we're at that edge, we learn how to monitor and manage emotion, our span of apprehension. Here's a couple of tools that we use for this. This is a part of a overall dashboard that we have developed for people to understand and integrate the signals into understanding of where they are, say with stress. The idea of the stress wagon is, as you see, this guy's faced away from the wagon. So typically that's the way stress builds with us. We're not looking at this wagon that we're pulling symbolically, and as we're looking away, life begins to put different objects in it. And we oftentimes don't realize that we're stressed, or we're near burnout, or we've burned out our reserve capacity until we can no longer pull the wagon. And it's at that point, for many people, that when they turn around and say, what's going on here, that they look behind them, they're shocked by how much they've been carrying. So what we teach people is that there are signals that we can seek out in our stress, in the stress in our life by actively doing an inventory of what we have in the wagon and choosing what's most important. We have a model we use called crystal, steel, plastic. Crystal's the most important stuff that's you don't want to drop it. You don't want to break it. When you're in college, academics is crystal. And there are other things that are crystal as well. So like family is still important. Friends, connection, socialization versus isolation. For some people, that's crystal. I'm going to say for most people, it's crystal in college. The whole some of the art of life is about learning how to manage the crystal and the steel. Steel is also important, but not as important as the crystal. And then plastic. That's the stuff that we carry in the wagon. We anything that we invest energy in, that's in the wagon. And so when we're talking about this model, our participants will typically say, well, what's plastic in your life? Video games. They spend a lot of time with them, but they're the least important things in their lives. So understanding what is crystal when you look at that stress wagon and how much of what you're carrying is crystal and how much is steel or plastic kind of informs what you can do to manage it. Another model we use here, this is probably pulled from a video game, the energy bar. We have peaks and valleys of our energy level throughout the day. Most mammals around 2 o'clock have a sinking spell on energy. And then over days and weeks throughout a semester, levels may rise and fall. And what's most important is that we tune into that as a vital physical kinesthetic signal within ourselves that lets us know and informs our actions. As I said, there's several of them. It's beyond the scope of our meeting tonight to go into each one of them, but they come together as a sort of a dashboard at the end. Another tool we call this is a part of our psyche that we all have. We have what I call a visionary. That's the dreamer, the part that can relate the normally unrelated and come up with wonderful ideas and solutions to problem. That's the visionary. The producer is the part of us that can look at all these ideas, pick out what's most important, sequence a plan, and execute the plan to accomplish it. That's executive function, of course. The editor is the part that steps back and says, what could go wrong here? How could this fail? And how would we avert failure before we even begin? How can we refine this to make it a better outcome, less energy input, that sort of thing? So each of these, when we teach this model, young people get this immediately. They can relate to it. And the second part of this is that we have each of these parts either in advanced, emerging, or dormant state. And I'm always like to tell them about when I was 18 years old, my visionary was advanced, still is. My producer was emerging. I'm a young man with ADHD, and I could get some things done, but I was challenged with my executive functions. My editor was dormant, and there's a lot of reasons. It was very harsh, filled with lots of different negative messages, and so I didn't have that part of me active. I could make the same mistake over and over again and not learn from it. I turned it off, I think, because it was so harsh. I remember in high school being told by my math teacher, same math teacher in the small school for 3 years. And every time they had breakouts for college, she'd say, John, stay here and do your homework. You don't need to go. You're not college material. And that was one of the milder ones. I got a lot of other harsh messages as a young man with ADHD, undiagnosed, back when we didn't know what that was. Um, and I think it it was so it's the impact was that whenever I had an idea in my visionary, that the editor, this harsh editor, would say, "No, you can't do that." And us in my childish young adult mind figured, well, I can't live without a visionary, but I can surely live without an editor. And in time, I did the work to decontaminate the editor and brought it back online. And what we get across is the idea that it's our own personal genius derives from uh, bringing all three parts into an advanced state. That requires something of tuning into the kind of signals that they're trying to give us. I tuned out the editor signals. It's a classic signal um, diminish and signal amplifier process. Oh, here's another tool. Oh, method motive opportunity. This is a mantra we use. There's that helps to refine the signals we have. Whenever we have a goal we want to attain or a problem we want to solve, it involves something from each of these three sorting bins. Method is how to do it. Motive is what is my motivation to do it, and opportunity is having all the tools to do it. It's um, I got this from the FBI developed this as a profiling method for determining who would be suspects in a crime. But imagine someone that has a goal, and this is a common one we hear it after someone's failed the first year. They say, "Well, I want to make a 3.0 or better GPA this year." So we start with method. How do you do that? What do you need to know how to do? Do you know how to study? Do you know how to connect with professors and classmates? Do you know how to organize your work along a timeline, whether that's a calendar or a planner? How to break things into component parts? Do you know how to motivate yourself to get this done? Um, and what is it, fear or desire, or what other nuanced motivators make up your motivation profile? Opportunity. If you if you need meds, do you have them prescribed? If you have them prescribed, do you have access and do you take them? Do you need accommodations? Have you connected with the student disability services? Do you have a quiet place to study? All of these things have to do with more the environment, the context. So this is a signal sorting tool that we use that is it's made all the difference in the world for some people. Let's see. Well, we got a couple more here, but I'm watching the time. Let me move on. If we have more time, I'll bounce back because there's one more tool here that we use that brings it all together. We call this the success curve, and it's the epic collector of signals that brings it all together. Just to give you an introduction to it, though, and you can use this. We use this in work settings and relationships, we started using it first in substance abuse, and then later in college. So there's three zones that people are in when it comes to success, and the zone one is where things look good. Product wise, the person is making A's. Process wise, they're going about it with some good habits, some regular attention to self-care, um, life balance. From the outside looking in, this is where students all start. And here's what parents see. The student's not reporting any struggles. Everything's great. They're on that success line. And somewhere around, oh, November, oh no, I'm struggling, I'm failing, boom. And at this point, they're in zone 3. Once they're in zone 3, there's nothing can be done but to sort of make meaning of the failure and try to minimize any and do damage control. Zone 2 is where all the action takes place. This is the slippery slope where people descend into failure because they're not listening to their signals. The thing that I've learned through the years is that we tend to succeed and fail in structurally similar ways. We tend to the way we fail tends to repeat itself again and again. And we get in a workshop, we'll get students to talking about their own slide to failure. And there's steps, there's little tiny things. You may start with a missed class, missed assignment. That sets the stage for maybe missing other classes. Well, I can miss a class and get away with it, and I guess I can miss some more, or they give themselves permission. Things start slipping. They're maybe haven't set up or not using supports, not maybe failing a test and not talking to the professor, not using office hours. Each one of these indicators, and it's kind of magic how people can plot their indicators. Once they just put this in front of them, it just rolls out. But what's magic is when we go back and say, all right, for each indicator, there's an antidote behavior that would bring you back up to that success line. And right here at the beginning, it's real close. It doesn't take a lot. As you drift further down the slope, it takes more and more and more, so that when you get down here into zone 3, there is so much required that it's physically impossible to pull back up to the success line. So learning how to tap into and listen to these signals early on and understand and differentiate. We do what we call signal mapping, where people use it as a tool that helps them begin to tap into the various kinds of signals, the cognitive, the emotional, the kinesthetic signals that they may not have been as aware of. As they tune inward into those signals, it becomes habituated, and they get really good at it. Let's see. Oh, this is more of what I was talking about. The thing about it is that as people fail like this again and again, it's not just something they've done. It's not just an action or a thought or a feeling. It becomes it becomes a belief. People begin to believe that they're not failing, they are a failure. So that's another piece of work that we do, is helping people to understand how their belief systems form and how to bring them back up to speed. But the best and easiest way is to learn this curve and catch it early on. This is just more of the same. And this is what a completed this is what a completed curve would look like. It's not. It doesn't, because what we have is antidotes for when they slip into zone 2. But a way of thinking in zone 1, there's forces at play, there's habits, there's things we're doing that keep us in this zone. And some of those are listed here. And there may be other process things like self-care, the appropriate amount of connection with people versus isolation. There's several process things as in addition to the products that are part of this. So here's the this is classic ADD. Here's an overload for you right here. But this is what we do to bring all of this together. And it's not even all of it. But this curve gives us the ability to help students to integrate the signaling, to access and integrate the signaling that goes with all of these elements that we talked about tonight and many more. This goes into a sort of a dashboard that it's something that the students can use on their own day to day. They can chart it. They use it as a check-in for coaching and therapy sessions. It makes life doable. It makes it manageable. And for a person with a neurotypical person, this uh, might freak you out, but people with ADHD, they would see the order in there that helps them to make meaning, especially when they learn each piece at a time. It's like a dashboard on the airplane. First time I flew an airplane, I'm like, oh my God, what are all these things? Where's the speedometer? There's no speedometer. Had to learn the different components of the dashboard. Um, One of the exciting things we're doing is we're working on an app that would take the worksheets that we have. And there's some 20 worksheets that go with this whole second book that empower a person with ADHD to learn certain aspects of themselves, like where are they with their visionary producer editor? There's a emotional intelligence piece we haven't gotten into. What might my limiting beliefs be? What are the feelings that I try to avoid the most, the ones that get me in trouble the most, the ones that are most useful? These are all parts of a profile that we're gonna that will be the front end load of an app that then generates cues that help people stay on task and grow in these particular areas. For example, if a person's editor is offline, if it's um, emerging or dormant, there would be a plan of action that would be reinforced, would empower them to bring this back online. It's a very um, comprehensive and ambitious project, and it will take a handful of people to get it done in 6 months, which is our goal. But I'm excited about it because it's so comprehensive. It is a, a self-learning tool that is signal-based that will empower a student paradoxically to no longer need the app, to be able to just move forward in life, having developed all these parts. So that's something that's in the offing. Also, I have my Substack account here. I mentioned earlier. If you'd like, feel free to subscribe. If you find a place on there that says anything about donations or support, just ignore it, because this is free. I'm putting this online for people to have a dialogue with people as they're integrating the new book here into their lives. Basically, I'm going to put chunks of the book at a time on in 5-minute reads on Substack with some discussion. So let me think here. I'm hoping as you were hearing this that some questions may have occurred to you. You may have had your own signals generating within you. And I wanted to have this time for you to take a few minutes and ask some questions, and uh, let's see what I can do with them. And thank you for your attention.
So, there is a question of, about is the lack of an ability to learn from our past associated with deficits in the brain's executive functioning?
Um, that could be. We think about executive functioning happen in the prefrontal cortex. The the editor is about critical thinking, and I don't know the answer to that. I would think there would be an overlap but sometimes people don't have that. They may have the access to critical thinking, or a part of them, a discernment part that says, hey, what happens if I do this? But especially people with ADHD, we may have a impulsivity component that makes it difficult to activate, to act upon that that very wise editor part of us. I'll talk to people about creating working space, a pause between the dreamer or the visionary and the action of the producer. And I recall it was a terrifying event that happened when I was a kid. We in rural Texas, we came across a drilling rig out on a field out in the middle of nowhere where we're going to fish, and there was a load of explosives on this truck, and we had a couple of kids. Well, we were all probably ADHD. There were 7 or 8 of us, and one of them thought it would be a great idea to just take these explosives and we could do some fun stuff with them. He's walking off with them, and we're all in a group. And one kid said, "What happens if this blows up?" And we all stopped. We paused. We were about, I don't know, 50 feet away from the truck, and that pause that gave us opportunity to activate our critical thinking, our editor. What's the worst that would happen? And then the challenge was deciding who's going to carry that stuff back to the truck, because I was going to go the other direction. Most of the kid that brought the question up was about that. And a lot of times that's what happens in ADHD land. We're impulsive, we're excited to move toward an idea, and we need that working space to pause. So I think of it more of as a need for that particular tool that lets us listen to the signals that our editor is giving us. I'm sorry, I hope that answered the question. I deviated a bit. I look more towards solution than cause.
Thank you. Another question is, can exceeding the span of apprehension lead to depression?
Oh, yes. If it can very much lead to depression, especially if you think about the cognitive, emotional, physical. Just when we overload ourselves, we when we exceed our span of apprehension in a moment, and we stop and drop everything, then we recollect it. That's like a 5-10 minute process. Sometimes we do that. We exceed our span of apprehension in a larger sense in our life over a longer period of time. We have what's termed in psychology, we have a surge capacity that we all have, which means we go to our limit and that's all we can do. But then there's this capacity we hold in reserve, and we can go a little bit further. But what needs to happen is when we surge and deplete that capacity, we really need to restore it. However we restore our energy, it may be being with people, it may be being often alone, going on a vacation. And if we don't restore that capacity, we get what's known as surge capacity depletion, which is burnout. And it looks a whole lot like depression. And a lot of times, depending on how it is that we've exceeded our span of apprehension emotionally, that could simply be a depression that we're creating, because that's a chronic condition that goes with an over exceeded span of apprehension emotionally. Hope that answers it.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, one of our attendees is saying, I work with students with disabilities, including ADHD. Time blindness is regularly raised by them. Any strategies to best support them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It depends on the age of your, can you answer, tell me what age students do you work with? Because that would depend, would make a difference. Can somebody fill that answer for me?
Yeah, it's 18 plus, it's college age.
Oh, they're old enough. After age 13, they have the capacity for formal operational thinking for the most part. I would share with them this model and get to where you draw time in ways that approximates their timeline. And if their past is behind them, their future's in front of them, have them draw, make a drawing, render a drawing of that, and put events along that timeline. Something in the future, have them, instead of going straight ahead, have them point, branch out to different directions, to different events in the future, and put steps along the way to it. That, what that does is process wise, it begins to get them thinking in terms of visualizing a separate set of future events rather than a big blob. And the past, it gets them thinking, doing the work of looking back and thinking in terms of the sequences that led to where they are now, the things that worked, the things that didn't work. The curve is that I showed you is a very, very good tool for people who have difficulty with time distortion, especially around the past. Um, if you think about it, below the line, the indicators are the past, the above the antidotes are maybe future behaviors that they could employ. The other thing that the work of the producer in that visionary producer editor model, the work of the producer is to basically organize after picking the goal, they sequence a plan and then execute the plan. But the plan has to be sequenced in a way that they can comprehend. And so that means a calendar or a planner, or let me say it this way, there's a magic to this. There's a special kind of calendar that or planner that I recommend to students. And that planner is the one that works for them. A college student I worked with bought a 4x8 sheet of shower stall and put it on the wall of their dorm, and that's how they planned everything. They had all kind of strange designs. They show me pictures of it, and I'm like, oh my God, how do you know? He'll say, oh, here's this, and this. He knew exactly what he was doing, and it worked for him. So that's a long answer to a short question like that. But those are some examples of how you might work with young adults on time issues.
Thank you. We have one last question for you, Dr. Thomas.
Hmm.
Does the dashboard app help people with ADHD recognize and interpret the signals from within themselves and decide how to act upon them? And if so, is there a minimum age or level of self-awareness, sort of like maturity, that the person needs to make proper use of the techniques?
Yes, I'm going to say that what we're designing and the work that we do, what's in the book, what's in we do facilitator training and participant training. Our work is designed for students who are at least at or beyond the formal operational stage, which can be as early as 13. But we find that what we do works best with people at earliest at junior high school level and beyond. So yes, that's who I believe this would work best for. Not to say that you couldn't use these same concepts with a younger group. I can't tell you the number of times I've had teachers, parents come up to me and say, why don't you develop this for middle schoolers? And well, there's a whole story there about why I work with this age group. This has to do with where I was struggling, and I know it intimately, not just professionally, but personally. And so I can bring the tools of that era to them better.
Wonderful. Is there any other questions? I think everybody was just sort of thanking you and appreciating the lecture tonight. Thank you everyone for coming.
Oh, quick comment. The other thing, if you have any questions after this, oh, I was going to say reach out, but just go to the Substack, hit me up there. I can answer questions personally, or if you're comfortable sharing them with other people, everybody will get something from your questions and answers. Thank you for your attention tonight. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, everyone. And everyone, again, will be getting a recording of the lecture and the handouts. And Dr. Thomas is always available to answer any questions or have dialogue in regards to all of these different elements that he's presented tonight. So we do have a November lecture, and we will be soon promoting that. So stay tuned for next month. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for your time this evening.
You're welcome.